The moment the lights went out, I knew something was wrong, not just power outage in a storm wrong, but wrong in that spine-crawling, gut-twisting way that tells you you're not as alone as you thought. The thunder outside wasn't what made me flinch, it was the creaking floorboard from upstairs. One creak, then another. Slow, heavy, measured. I held my breath, frozen on the staircase, with only the soft orange glow of a candle in my hand. The storm outside threw shadows across the hallway like writhing ghosts. But I wasn't afraid of shadows. Not after what I had just discovered. I'd found Grandma Evelyn's second will. Not the sanitized one the lawyer had read out loud at her funeral, the one where everything was to be split evenly among her children. This one was handwritten, dated a month before she died, and hidden behind a loose floorboard under her bed. It said one thing, everything to Lily. The house. The land. The secrets. She's the only one who stayed. Secrets? I hadn't even finished reading before the storm had kicked up, as if the house itself was reacting. The winds roared like a beast, and somewhere deep in the walls, I heard something shift. Let me back up. 3 months ago, I came to take care of Grandma. No one else volunteered. My parents were too busy, my cousins uninterested, and everyone else had already written her off as a senile old woman in a crumbling house. But she wasn't senile. She was scared. They'll come when I die, she told me, more than once. They've been waiting. She said strange things, like how the house was older than the records claimed, how the cellar doors had been nailed shut for a reason, and how every mirror in the house had to be covered after dark. I humored her, of course. I even nailed the curtains over the mirrors. I didn't believe her. Not until she died. After the funeral, I stayed. Not for the inheritance, but because it felt wrong to leave her house empty. She had asked me to stay. Begged, really. The others had all left before the dirt even settled on her grave. They didn't care. I did. And maybe that's why the house opened itself to me. It began with little things. The lock on the attic door was undone one morning. I swore I hadn't touched it. Then I found an old journal tucked behind the pantry. Written in Grandma's hand, but filled with symbols and drawings I didn't recognize. There were entries, frantic and terrified, about the mirror gate and keeping the seal intact. That's when I began to understand. She hadn't been afraid of dying. She'd been afraid of what would happen after. And now, standing in the candlelight, I realized something else. This house wasn't haunted. It was a prison. And something inside it had just noticed the warden was gone. Another creak from upstairs. I forced myself up the staircase, each step an effort. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to know. But I couldn't look away either. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about Grandma anymore. This was about me. About why she'd left it all to me, and what she needed me to do. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched into darkness. The attic door was open, just a sliver, but wide enough for the candlelight to catch on something glinting inside. A mirror. The one she always kept locked away. The candle flickered wildly as I stepped closer. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and my reflection wasn't alone. A pale hand pressed against the glass from the other side. And then I heard her voice. "You're the key now, Lily. Don't let them out." My fingers tightened on the candle as the door creaked open fully behind me. I turned. Slowly. Something was there. And that's when the candle went out. I couldn't see a thing. The darkness wasn't just dark, it was thick, absolute, like being buried alive. I scrambled backward, my hands out in front of me, knocking into a covered chair, then a stack of old trunks. Dust exploded into the air with every movement, clogging my throat. The mirror hadn't shattered, but something had moved. I was sure of it. The air around me changed. Grew colder. Heavier. Then, the whisper returned. Not Grandma this time. This voice was lower. Male. Not angry, curious. "She chose you." "Why?" I froze. My back was against the attic wall now, the cold from the stone behind the wood seeping through my sweater. Then I remembered my phone. I fumbled it from my pocket and activated the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, shaky and weak, but it was something. The mirror stood across the room, reflecting my light back at me. But the reflection wasn't right. In the mirror, I was standing in front of the glass, frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly agape. But I wasn't. I was 10 feet away, crouched on the floor. I lifted the phone, pointed it directly at the mirror. My reflection didn't move. It blinked. I dropped the phone. It clattered across the floor, the beam spinning like a lighthouse, briefly illuminating the far wall. There was something there. A second mirror. Smaller, round, and cracked. Hanging crookedly from a nail. Covered in strange carvings around its frame. And then I saw it, a glint of metal. A lockbox on the floor in front of it, half buried under old blankets. I crawled toward it, still trying to steady my breathing. My hand closed around the box, and it was warm, pulsing. I opened it. Inside was a notebook. Thick, leather-bound, the edges burnt. My name was on the first page. Lily, if you're reading this, it means the others failed. You have 30 days to restore the seals. After that, they come through. All of them. It was signed with a single initial, E. Behind me, the floorboards creaked. I turned slowly. The mirror was empty. No reflection. And then I realized. The door to the attic was closed. But I hadn't touched it. My heartbeat wasn't just in my chest anymore. It was in my throat, in my skull, in the tips of my fingers, thudding in a way that didn't seem like it belonged to my body at all, as if something inside me was answering a summons I didn't yet understand. And the attic itself pulsed in rhythm with it, a slow, dreadful tempo echoing from the floorboards up into the rafters, where cobwebs trembled without any breeze. I stood very still, clutching the leather-bound journal to my chest like a shield, even though every cell in my body screamed to run, to scream, to break down the attic door and flee into the night. But I couldn't, because I felt it, something ancient. Something watching me not with eyes, but with memory, as though the house itself remembered me from a time I didn't know I'd lived. The flashlight lay on its side across the room, casting an arc of weak light that swung across the mirror and the smaller, broken one beside it. Shadows moved in those mirrors, not mine, not in sync, and then something horrifyingly familiar happened. I saw my mother. She was younger, maybe 20, wearing a white dress I'd only seen in photographs from the attic's forgotten albums, her hair longer, unbrushed, and her face twisted in fear. She was standing behind me in the mirror. Only she wasn't in the room. Just her reflection, her mouth open in a silent scream. Then she vanished. My legs gave out. I slumped to the floor, the journal sliding from my grasp, opening on a page scrawled in hasty ink. They feed on memory. They were the faces of the ones you love. It isn't them. Don't speak to them. Don't believe them. The page flipped on its own. Another entry. The mirror is not a window. It's a door. And the door is weakening. I don't remember crawling to the small round mirror, only that I found myself inches from it, the carvings vibrating against my fingertips when I touched them. They weren't just symbols, they were names, etched in old languages I shouldn't have recognized, yet somehow did. I whispered one. The mirror flared with light. And suddenly I wasn't in the attic anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere cold and vast and empty, surrounded by 1,000 floating fragments of glass, each one showing a different scene, a child crying alone in the dark, a man screaming into a storm, my grandmother as a little girl holding a doll made of thorns, and in the center of it all, a mirror suspended in midair, pulsing like a heartbeat. I knew instinctively. This was the space behind the glass, the place she warned me about, the place that should have never been opened. A voice old as bone whispered in my ear, one soul for one seal. Restore it or feed it. Then the vision shattered. I was back in the attic, gasping, choking, my hands covered in black soot like I'd been pulling coal from a furnace. The door behind me was open now, just a crack. But I wasn't alone. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. And a familiar voice called up, gentle and trembling. Lily? It's me. Your mother. I'm here now, sweetheart. My blood ran to ice. Because my mother had died when I was 7. And she was buried 50 miles away. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. The voice calling from the bottom of the attic stairs was warm and maternal, lined with the same cadence my mother once used to coax me out from under the bed during thunderstorms, the same lilting hush she sang lullabies with, only this time. Each syllable dragged like a blade over my skin, because no matter how much I wanted to believe she was standing down there, no matter how much I ached for it to be true, I knew it wasn't her. It couldn't be her. Every inch of my body tightened into a knot, my fingers digging into the scorched floorboards, sweat cold on my neck as that false, stolen voice floated up again, a little closer, a little clearer, saying things no stranger would know, things no imposter should know. Lily, remember the oak swing in the backyard? The one I pushed you on before the accident. And something inside me crumbled, because she knew. She knew about the swing. She knew the exact number of stitches I'd needed when I fell, the scent of Grandma's garden where she used to braid my hair, the secret knock we invented on the basement wall during hide and seek, all of it, all of my memories. Like pages ripped from a diary I never meant anyone to read. But the journal had warned me. They feed on memory. They were the faces of the ones you love. So I stayed quiet, gripping the edge of the mirror like an anchor, my heart screaming for answers, for safety, for my real mother who would never walk through that door again. And in that awful silence, something shifted in the attic, a pressure, like the house was inhaling deeply, drawing in my fear, tasting it. The voice stopped. And then the knock came. 3 soft raps on the attic door. Deliberate. Patient. And when I didn't answer, it came again. And again. Each knock louder, harder, until it wasn't a knock anymore, but a pounding that shook the floor, rattled the mirror, cracked the ancient glass in the tiny round frame beside me. The voice screamed now, a guttural, animal thing no longer pretending to be human. I slammed my hand against the leather journal and flipped to the index. There, scribbled in a mess of symbols and fragments of Latin, was a spell. Or no, not a spell exactly, but a rite, something passed down in my blood, something ancient and buried. Grandma had translated part of it herself. To reseal the breach, one must face the reflection and name the lie. The lie. I stood, shaking but resolute, facing the large mirror now, the surface still shimmering like black water. And in that reflection, I saw her, my mother, but not her, her eyes too dark, her smile too wide, standing just behind me with a hand stretched out, beckoning me. Say it, I whispered, unsure if I was speaking to her or to myself. The mirror pulsed. Say the lie. I looked into the eyes of the thing pretending to be her, and I said it, not a spell, not a curse, but the truth. You're not my mother. She's dead. And she would never ask me to open the door. The mirror screamed. Not a sound, not in the air, but in my head, an explosion of noise that shattered the silence into fragments. The reflection contorted, peeled apart, like paper burning from the center, and the figure that wore my mother's face vanished in a flare of violet light. Then silence again. Real silence. I fell to my knees, panting, the journal clutched to my chest, and in that fragile stillness, I understood something terrifying. That was only one of them. Only one test. Only one lie. There were more. So many more. And 30 days to face them all. Time changed in that house. Not like minutes ticking by or the hands of a clock turning predictably, but like something more organic, more terrible, like the way dreams stretch or shrink depending on how close you are to waking, and in the days that followed the first breach. I stopped counting hours altogether because sleep became meaningless and sunlight only occasionally found its way through the heavy curtains, which I kept drawn out of instinct or fear, or perhaps because part of me already knew that what was coming next would not need nightfall to crawl in through the cracks. I read the journal obsessively, every page a map inked in dread and desperation, my grandmother's voice bleeding through the margins in scribbled notes and warnings, as though she'd written them with trembling hands, and the knowledge that no one, not her children, not her sisters, not even my mother, would be brave or foolish enough to follow her footsteps to the end, which meant, by blood and by fate, it had always been meant for me. The rules became clearer. 30 days, 30 reflections, 30 lies that needed to be unmasked, each one more cunning than the last, each one a piece of the prison trying to break open from within, using me, my memories, my grief, my regrets, as crowbars to pry apart the seals that had held them for centuries. Some came in the form of familiar faces. My high school best friend, dead in a drowning accident 10 years ago, appeared in the bathroom mirror asking why I hadn't answered her final call. An old neighbor from the cul-de-sac I grew up on, smiling with a mouth full of teeth that weren't hers, appearing in the polished metal of a serving tray. Even my own reflection, one night, twisted and wrong, whispering that I'd already failed, that I was just stalling the inevitable collapse. Others weren't human at all. One night, I woke to the sound of scratching beneath my bed, only to find a mirror lying face up under the floorboards, its glass showing a creature I had no name for, hunched and eyeless, scribbling my name over and over into the dirt with a finger made of bone. Another time, I found a mirror hanging from the branches of the old elm tree outside, where something dripped upside down from the reflection, dripping ichor that turned the soil black. Each one demanded something different. Sometimes truth, sometimes sacrifice, sometimes just acknowledgement, refusal to deny what was clearly there, waiting, patient, old as the foundations themselves. And through it all, I kept sealing them, kept closing the breaches by naming the lie aloud, by anchoring myself to the reality I could still claim as mine, by remembering who I was and who I wasn't, until there was only one mirror left. The first one. The great mirror in the attic. The one that started it all. On the 30th day, the house was silent, unnaturally so, like the breath before a scream, and as I climbed the stairs for what I hoped would be the last time, the journal felt heavier in my hands, its pages thrumming with energy, as though it too knew the end was near. Or perhaps the beginning of something else entirely. The attic door was already open, and the mirror was waiting. It no longer shimmered with distortion or rippled like water. It was calm, clear, reflective, deceptively ordinary. And in it, I saw myself exactly as I was, tired, hollow-eyed, a little older than I'd looked a month ago, but still me. Until I blinked. And my reflection didn't. It smiled. I didn't. It raised its hand. I didn't move. "You've done well," it said, with my voice but not my tone too smooth, too rehearsed. "You've resealed the gates. All but one. The most important one." My throat tightened. "This one," I said. The smile widened. "No, Lily. Not this mirror. You." It pointed at me. "You're the final seal." And just like that, I understood. It wasn't about closing off the others. It was about me. My memories, my pain, my willingness to stand guard. The house had chosen me not just as caretaker, but as gatekeeper. Living. Breathing. Permanent. I had always thought Grandma left me this house because she loved me, because I was the only one who stayed, but now I realized she'd left me the burden, the curse, the mantle she could no longer carry. And I had accepted it unknowingly, the day I said I'd stay. The mirror began to pulse. The air turned to ice. And my reflection stepped forward. "Seal or sacrifice," it said. "Choose." I held up the journal. Flames erupted from its pages, consuming it instantly. The mirror screamed. I stepped into the reflection. And I chose. The house still stands at the edge of town. Its lights never come on, but sometimes, people say they see a flicker in the attic window. No one answers the door. No one stays overnight. But if you ever do, don't look in the mirror. Not unless you're ready to see her. And whatever you do, don't blink first.